Well, we're over 30 weeks into the Biden administration, and things are really spooky. Last week, we left off covering companies' new vaccine mandates and how their employees are handling the new policies. After a major pushback from employees, including walkouts, protests, and staff shortages, companies are starting to yield and reconsider these mandates. United Airlines has been in a real bind lately. After vaccinated pilots refused to fly with unvaccinated staff, United sidelined those who were unvaxxed, putting them on unpaid leave. But they were hit with a lawsuit and had to cough up $3 million in paid leave to employees who were let go through November the 24th. Around 2,000 employees asked for medical or religious exemptions, and United has already dropped 3 routes to smaller U.S. cities. So once this restraining order is over, what are they going to do? Maybe American Airlines can lend some advice on how they're handling staff shortages. After canceling 250 more flights on Friday, American Airlines are now totaling over 2,000 canceled flights due to staff shortages. I meant because of the weather. A spokesperson from American Airlines said that they're expecting 1,800 of their flight attendants to come back after being put on leave during the pandemic, and are hiring 600 more by December. But word on the street is they better hire more than that, because after American Airlines issued a memo saying staff must be vaccinated or exempt by November the 24th, a 200-person protest erupted outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth headquarters. American Airlines really can't afford to lose any more staff. The ones they have are already overworked and trying to keep everyone calm. But let's see how that turned out.
American Airlines passengers voicing frustration as this man is detained by law enforcement. CBS News has learned while in the air, a flight attendant bumped the first-class passenger and quickly apologized. Later, the passenger went to the galley, punched the same crew member twice, breaking bones in her face, returning to his seat as if nothing happened.
But they're not the only ones. Southwest backtracked their plan to fire their unvaccinated workers by their December 8th deadline, and instead allowed religious, medical, and disability exemptions. And of course, mask mandates will be implemented. But apparently, not everyone agrees. After a San Jose flight, a Southwest pilot and flight attendant got into a brawl over mask wearing, and the pilot, Nick Borelli, caught an assault and battery charge. And another Southwest pilot said, "This is all Joe Biden's fault," and chants, "Let's go Brandon," over the intercom.
Southwest Airlines is launching an internal investigation after a pilot reportedly signed off a message to passengers by saying, "Let's go Brandon." Now, that is a phrase that has become conservative code for swearing at President Biden. It actually means F Joe Biden.
Delta thought they were just going to glide under the radar and try to keep the peace with their employees by not firing their staff over mandatory vaccines and offering a tranquil, relaxing travel experience to their passengers with Pelotons, gentle stretches, and deep meditation. Yep, I'm relaxed already. What the hell? Well, so much for that. And police unions are pushing back on vaccine mandates as cities are forcing their staff to get vaccinated. Despite violent crime increasing by 5% and murder nearly 30% in 2020, especially in big cities such as Seattle, San Francisco, New York, Baltimore, and the blood splatter capital of the world, Chicago, Anthony Fauci still says that COVID is the leading killer amongst police officers. And these cities are cracking down the hardest on mandates for officers. And lawsuits have been flying. And despite what Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot says,
I deeply believe that the only way that we can maximize safety in our workplace is by getting our employees vaccinated.
A judge blocked that order of forcing their end of the year vaccine mandates until the unions have had their day in court. And New York has 9,000 employees out of work, including firefighters and police officers who still refuse to oblige to Mayor de Blasio's October 24th deadline. Employees have chosen to go on unpaid leave, and more than 2,000 firefighters are cashing in on sick leave until their voices are heard. Uniform Firefighters Association President Andrew Ansborough says the mandates would force dozens of flyer companies to have to shut down. And our military is in a major limbo, as 10,000 individuals have still not taken the jab, with the deadline of November the 2nd, and many will be discharged. So, just for clarity, we're firing emergency responders while crime is through the roof, and we are firing medical staff during a pandemic.
Should police officers, emergency responders, be mandated to get vaccines? And if not, should they be stay at home or let go?
Yes and yes.
Yeah, because that makes sense. And while staff shortages are increasing, stores are bearing empty shelves, and our essentials are lost at sea, Joe Biden couldn't think of a more perfect time to dip off and attend a climate summit. Yep, multiple private jet planes shooting chemtrails in the sky, and a parking lot full of gas guzzlers pouring smog in the air arrived at the G20 Climate Change Summit to discuss how we need to cut back on emissions and save the planet. So, Zoom wasn't available, or... Anyway, Joe slept through majority of it, and the world leaders are laughing at us and questioning his leadership, especially when his approval rating is declining in his own country, and 40% of his own party wish they had a different candidate in 2024. But Joe said,
polls are going to go up and down and up and down. Look at every other president. The same thing has happened.
Joe said, regardless of what the poll says, at least he's here, unlike some people we know.
Not only Russia, but China basically didn't show up in terms of any commitments to deal with climate change.
China and Russia are amongst the highest contributors of pollution in the world. China at the top of the charts with more than 10 million tons of CO2 released, reported in 2021. China made it very clear that it is nearly impossible to expect zero emissions for another 50 years, as the country is still developing. So let me get this right. China is the biggest contributor to pollution, and they said they ain't letting up anytime soon. We release half the amount of CO2 that they do, yet we are paying over $500 billion in Biden's BBB bill to combat climate change while relying heavy on China for imports. So are we not financially contributing to a country to do exactly what we're paying out the ass to combat? This is exactly why we need to watch the children in office and know exactly what is in that BBB bill and keep the debt limit right where it is until we know where all this money is going. I'm actually surprised I haven't heard more Biden supporters complain about the campaign promises that were cut out. For example, funding to HBCUs, cut. Free tuition, cut. 12 weeks paid family leave, cut. And the list goes on. Somebody better say, show me the receipts. Elon Musk sure did. Elon said that he would give the WFP $6 billion right now if they would show us where the money goes. I wouldn't hold my breath for that reply, but yes, Elon, expose the corruption. One thing for sure, Kamala has been exposing herself. Remember when I said when Kamala gets quiet, I get nervous? Well, hell, she laughs, I get nervous too. Well, she has been really showing her ass these last couple of weeks. For starters, After she sat and watched Biden strip funding to HBCUs, her own alma mater hit the headlines, complaining of unfair living conditions. Has anyone heard Kamala say a word? Just checking. Then Kamala was called out by Douglas Wilder for pandering to black churchgoers to get out and vote for McAuliffe.
I believe that my friend Terry McAuliffe is the leader Virginia needs at this moment.
However, that is a direct violation of the law. In Revenue Ruling 2007-41, businesses that don't pay taxes don't participate in political affairs. Even though 300 black churches have already agreed to play the video, which is bizarre because is this not the same McAuliffe that hobnobs with the Clintons, helping them secure their home by making it rain $1.35 million in cash? The same McAuliffe that defended and downplayed Ralph Northam's blackface photos.
Are you comfortable with the present governor who appeared in blackface next to somebody dressed up as Ku Klux Klan, a Democratic governor?
Yeah.
Is this not the same McAuliffe that causes racial division and panders to the black community, saying it's not about your kids getting the best education, but the best representation?
50% of the students at Virginia schools, K-12, 50% are students of color, and yet 80% of the teachers are white. We all know what we have to do in a school to make everybody feel comfortable in school.
And that's who Kamala's endorsing? Interesting. And the border has still seen better days. And as the surge continues to be a threat, people are looking to the border czar for direction. Kamala was supposed to sit down with Mexico's president to discuss the surge at the border and help solve the crisis, but ended up being a no-call, no-show, and sent Secretary of State Anthony Blinken in her spot so she could go play bingo at a daycare, show her face in the place at a vaccination center in Newark, and then hit up a bakery for some red velvet baked goods in New Jersey, because that was way more important. Definitely more important than advocating for Americans and calling out the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party, voting on not testing and vaccinating those coming into our country, and ensuring that they're following the same mandates American citizens are losing their livelihoods over. And definitely it was more important than getting to the bottom of why in the middle of the night Joe Biden is sprinkling immigrants all over the U.S. And clearly it was more important than explaining how in the hell $500,000 in reparations will be distributed to approximately 5,000 individuals that were separated at the border, managed to get into deliberations. Girl, if you don't get your ass to work, like, say you want riots again without saying you want riots. And when we asked Jen about all of this, she said, well, she didn't say very much of anything because our fully vaccinated redheaded stepchild has caught the Rona. But are we surprised? This is right on schedule for midterms. But they better come harder than that these coming years, though, because people are definitely waking up to the BS. And the way Virginia and Pennsylvania showed up at the polls, oh, it's game time, bitches.